Hey everybody, so I've been thinking about this for a while, maybe like the past month. And I want to share my story about my recovery journey, I guess. And now that I'm in an amazing place right now, hopefully my story can give someone hope out there because why not have a little hope? I mean, if I can do it, a lot of people can do it, anyone can do it. So here's a condensed version, not the most amazing in-depth version of my journey. But here goes. All right. During the semester between middle school graduation and the beginning of high school, I took 2 summer school courses. This would be the defining factor in which my eating disorder began. Summer school before freshman year, I had my first introduction to eating disorders. During my health class, we watched videos telling you the dangers and implications of eating disorders. These, of course, were meant to scare people, but instead I had this idea that if I cut down my intake even more, I might be able to lose weight. Going into high school and fitting in was a big fear of mine. After watching the videos, I instantly decreased my lunches I was bringing to school. I remember bragging to my friends about the new lifestyle change. They were a little less than impressed. The next summer school class I had during that session was PE, and running laps in the Florida summer heat was not a good mix for my new eating changes. I managed to limit myself at lunch and would try to socialize with others rather than eat. Amidst having a great freshman year academically and pleasing not only myself but also my parents, I still struggled a lot with self-harm and eating disorder actions. I would sometimes skip lunch and at this point had pretty much cut out breakfast. During my sophomore year, I started taking more challenging classes, including an AP class. I began skipping lunch, giving it to other people, or just throwing it away altogether, and would go to my dad's classroom during that time. I began to isolate from my peers and withdraw during the social time of lunch. I would rather have been by myself than sit and watch while others ate. I didn't feel like having to explain why I wasn't eating. During this year, I began to experiment with purging. I wasn't out of hand at this point, but purging to any degree is definitely not normal. During my junior year, I began to use marching band practice to aid in my eating disorder. I would run around the track after practice no matter how tired I was, and I would also limit my water intake and food intake lessened even more. This was the year where all hell broke loose with my eating disorder. I hadn't been eating breakfast or lunch and began to start purging when I did eat. It was very gradual but soon became overwhelming and fell out of my hands. I had a lot of pressure from school, taking multiple AP classes and having an extremely heavy academic load. Most of my friends in high school were a year older than me, so it almost felt as though this was my senior year. I would be losing many connections and close friendships I had made. Spring break this year, I went on a trip with my best friend and her family to Chicago. I consider this to be my last true place of happiness for a long time. Even though I truly was enjoying myself, I was still rampant in my eating disorder. I even brought workout clothes so I could go work out in the hotel rec room and was purging whenever I could break away. When I got back from Chicago, it seemed like everything went downhill quickly. I was purging almost any time I could, and my weight declined even more. I started my second job at Hollister in the Florida Mall. Talk about negative body image. They were so obsessed with the ideal perfect image. Our outfits had to be perfect, our hair a certain style, and our nails a certain color. I wanted to fit in, and already being pretty thin already, I kept on pursuing an unhealthy lifestyle. In August, a family friend confronted me about my eating disorder, and although I tried to deny it at first, I ended up telling her what was going on. Not thinking much about what I had confided in her, I went home. I went out with a friend that afternoon, and she had ended up coming over and telling my parents about everything. I don't know if I was more mad or relieved that she told them and the secret was finally out. I think more than anything, I was scared. I wasn't ready to get rid of my eating disorder, and I really didn't think it was that big of a problem. She gave my parents names and numbers for specialists, and so thus my recovery and treatment process began. My weight continued to drop, and my new team became very concerned and suggested a higher level of care. I was scared once again and was furious also. I was not ready to give up my eating disorder. My teachers were notified that I would be out of school, and I left on Friday, October 22nd for Renfrew and Coconut Creek, Florida. I hadn't had any interaction with other eating disorder people before, so being surrounded 24/7 by 39 other girls with eating disorders was definitely an adjustment. I came into the program on partial day room because my weight was so low. This meant that I had to stay in the day room and had to be escorted anywhere and everywhere during the day. I was with someone 24/7, yet I managed to purge every day at Renfrew. It was my secret that absolutely no one knew about. I was even afraid they would read my journal, so I didn't even write about it. I pretty much resisted treatment in any way possible. I never got off the day room level, never made it to level 1. I might have gained weight while I was there, but I never got any better. My therapy sessions quickly turned away from my eating disorder when I started self-harming again. I realized there that these became interchangeable. When one was at bay, the other one reared its angry head. I was put on full day room for not gaining the appropriate amount of weight and for self-harming. I needed even more supervision than I was already getting, and now wasn't allowed to leave the day room with the exception of sessions. The depression and suicidal thoughts started to become overwhelming, and I started to hold my meds. I would go to the med counter when I didn't need them just so I could get more. One Tuesday morning before we had team, I decided to take my stockpile. I didn't know what to expect, and the worst side effect I experienced was exhaustion. I ended up telling one of my friends, and she told a tech. I ended up being Baker acted that Wednesday afternoon. I was the only adolescent girl in the ward and had to sleep on a mattress in a closet because the other rooms were filled with boys. While I was there, I lost weight because I purged and restricted my meals. They didn't watch me, and I took no action to fight the eating disorder. I ended up going back to Renfrew on Friday, and they realized I lost weight while I was away and weren't happy at all. Due to insurance, I was discharged the next Wednesday. I went back to school that Friday and was taken aback by the sudden reality shock. I went from a residential care 24/7 to living at home within a day. After leaving Renfrew, I went to an intensive outpatient program, still engaged very much in my eating disorder. Still removed from the thought of recovery. After a few months of a higher level of care was recommended again. I entered ERC in Denver, Colorado, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2011. I truly credit this place with saving my life at the time. My psychiatrist there really worked with me and got me on good medication. He made an effort to understand and to listen to me. I struggled again with self-harm as the treatment progressed. I came close to being put on a 72-hour hold again, but was able to wiggle out of it with the faith of my psychiatrist. He gave me the chance and believed in me. At ERC, I experienced my longest period of recovery from not purging and following a meal plan. I was discharged on April 14th at the highest weight I had ever been. I met my goal, and insurance had once again cut out. But I felt good this time. Although I was uncomfortable in my body, I didn't want to mess up the time and effort I put into recovery. I came home and returned to IOP and seeing my therapist and dietitian. Unfortunately, I relapsed again. I didn't want to be in IOP, and I wanted to be done with treatment, and I was tired of it all. I felt as though I could manage recovery on my own and resisted IOP any chance I got. The relapse was not as bad as the last one, and I was able to keep it together and out of the danger zone. I graduated in May and was able to walk across the stage with the class of 2011. This was a big accomplishment because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to finish school since I had missed so much. I did whatever I had to graduate and move on from high school. I started out college with 3 classes my first semester. I would use the downtime in between 2 of my classes and go to the rec center and work out. I hadn't been to the gym since junior year of high school, and it was great. But there was a scale in the gym. First mistake. This started another relapse. It was worse than the one over the summer, but not as bad as the one leading to inpatient. Knowing my weight had always been a big trigger for me. Over Thanksgiving break, I started recovery again. My parents threatened to kick me out if I didn't get better, so I had to try and make a full-fledged effort to get better if I wanted to continue to live at home. March 19th, 2012, we got a phone call at 5:30 in the morning. My dad came into my room and told me to get up, and my mom had been in an accident. She was hit by a car while riding her motorcycle to work. She flew 40 feet, and her speedometer was broken at 11 miles per hour. We rushed to the scene, only being about 5 minutes from our house. When we got there, they were taking her away in an ambulance to the hospital. We got there soon after she did, but didn't get back to see her until about 11. They had so many x-rays and tests to do on her that we couldn't see her until they were finished. My sister came and sat with us while we waited to see her. I told her that I needed to get breakfast or I wouldn't eat. So we went to the cafeteria and I managed to have breakfast and keep it down. My mom had broken her pelvis in 3 places, almost all of her toes. Her left foot and ankle were severely mangled, and they thought they might have to amputate it. Her upper right arm was broken, and both of her wrists, and probably a few more things I'm forgetting. She was in surgery for about 10 hours. I managed to stay in recovery until March 27th. That morning, I remember fighting the thoughts that wanted me to purge, and I lost. I ended up purging, and my longest streak in recovery, being 4 months, was down the drain, literally. It went downhill extremely quickly afterwards. My eating disorder wasn't getting any better, and I wasn't planning on making any changes. Once I'm on a roll, it's so hard for me to stop and be pulled back into reality. Once I get this sick, treatment seems to be the only option to save me. My weight dropped 60 pounds within 6 months. I hadn't been this low since entering run through my senior year. My labs and EKG were showing problems, and my team was getting more and more worried. I ended up leaving school in October of 2012, having to step down for Halloween Horror Nights, and moving home within a matter of weeks. My world was falling apart. I began to lose everything I cared for, my independence, my education, and the job I loved. I returned home, and the tension between everyone just continued to keep building. There simply wasn't room for my eating disorder, but I wasn't ready to give it up yet. Or more so, I was, but couldn't get the treatment I desperately needed. In November, I was hospitalized for hypokalemia, low potassium, and was given fluids. My potassium was 1.6. The doctor working in the ER said he had never seen anyone with a potassium that low, and I should consider myself lucky to be alive. The night of February 21st, my mom and I got into a very heated argument, and she threatened to strangle me, which I replied with, "Go ahead." She tends to say things she regrets in heated situations, and I think we're all guilty of that at some point in our life, or points. I decided to take matters into my own hands and take a few extra pills that night and self-harm. She had made me so mad. Was my payback and in your face to her. It was only hurting me, though. My plan actually ended up backfiring. I woke up around 5 a.m. the next morning, having not slept much in the first place, and had extreme chest pain, shooting pain in my left arm, nausea, shortness of breath, and confusion. I literally thought I was having a heart attack and was scared. I called my dad around 7:15, and he told me to tell my mom, who said that I should wait when the doctor's office opened and make an appointment. That wasn't a good enough answer for me. So Dad came home from work and took me to the ER. Luckily, I wasn't having a heart attack, and it turned out to be hypokalemia again. They were able to get it up pretty quickly this time. I was really worried there was brain damage because my thoughts and perception were impaired for a lot of the morning. I wasn't thinking clearly, but I was cleared to leave the next morning. In March, I did a stint in Central Florida Behavioral Hospital in hopes of getting eating disorder treatment. This was the only place that my insurance would cover, so I thought they might be able to help cater to my illness and help me get the treatment I needed. This was not the case. It probably couldn't be any further from what actually happened. I ended up purging everything while I was there. I almost murdered the psychiatrist there. He wanted to discharge me after being there for one day, saying that I'm obsessed with going inpatient and that this can be managed on an outpatient basis. Anyone that has any eating disorder, knowledge, knows that a lot of eating disorders require a higher level of treatment. So I was only there for 5 days and ended up losing weight while I was there. My mom and dad were pissed that I was coming home. It was a waste of time and resources, and all I wanted was treatment. Instead, I got treated with complete disrespect. After nearly giving up hope and accepting the inevitable, I was encouraged by a friend to check out Columbia Research Hospital and New York State Psych Institute in New York City, New York. It's a research hospital, and since their treatment is all research-based and government-funded, it's also free. So I took the step and reached out to their program. After about a week and a half of phone interviews and doctor's visits to get medically cleared, I was accepted into their program. I was hesitant because I didn't know much about them and didn't know anyone personally who had been there. But this was my second chance. I had to make it work no matter what. I was on a plane to New York City with my mom on April 27th. We got there a couple days early so we could explore the city. This probably wasn't one of my mom's grander ideas. Not a good choice to take a very sick and underweight eating disorder person walking around the streets of New York for hours upon hours. By the time Sunday night came, I was beyond exhausted. Monday morning came, and I decided to make one last hurrah with my eating disorder before giving it up. I took the laxatives and diuretics I had brought with me to New York and made the cold, rainy walk with my mom to Columbia. During the first few days, I was purging in my room. I never thought it was a good idea to put bathrooms in eating disorder patients' rooms. On the second day I was in treatment, I participated in research. Everyone that was in Columbia participated in some sort of research. I was asked to sit in a room by myself in front of a personal buffet. I could eat whatever I wanted and however much I wanted and had to press a button when I was done. Oh, and I was being watched from another room on a video camera. I started out scared shitless. I had been binging and purging a lot before I came to this treatment, and this triggered a lot of feelings. I couldn't control the urges and ended up binging. This was probably the most embarrassed I have ever been when it comes to my eating disorder. When I was done, I was beyond full and wanted to purge. The researchers were going to allow me to go to the bathroom, but I declined the offer. When returning to the floor, I went to my room and purged for what would be the last time thus far. I was ashamed of myself and never wanted to go through that destructive behavior again. It was a breakthrough I needed all these years. It just wasn't worth it anymore. I was ready to get my life back and live. That's not to say my stay in New York was fine and dandy from there on. I struggled to accept my body after the weight gain, but found comfort in the new friends I had made since being on the unit. While in maintenance, I was able to go on meal passes, shopping, and experientials that aided in my recovery. I was also able to discover the persons inside that had been lost for far too long. I was discharged on July 10th and returned home soon after that. Since being home, I've been able to maintain my weight and rediscover myself. So many people don't get the second chance that I was given, and I consider myself to be extremely lucky. I'm not sure how much longer I would have survived had I not gotten help. I've been able to do so much more than I was before I left. I have now maintained my job and appreciate the new connections I have made. I'm on the way to being recovered, but for now I'm in recovery. After this chance that I was given and the hard work I've done, I never want to go back. This isn't to say I don't still have my problems in my life like any other person. It just means that I don't deal with them through my eating disorder or harmful behaviors. I'm moving past that and never want to return to the hell of an eating disorder again. Thanks, guys, for listening. That's it.